All right, let's talk about silver. Specifically, its absolutely wild price history. For over 100 years, it's been one of the most volatile, most story-filled commodities out there. And today, we're going to figure out exactly why.
I mean, just look at this chart. This is not a steady climb, right? It's a roller coaster, a series of these dramatic, heart-stopping peaks and valleys. So you have to wonder, what makes a metal that we've used as money for literally thousands of years act like this? Well, that's the big question we're tackling today.
Okay, so to really get a grip on these insane peaks, we've got to go back. We need to look at silver's entire journey over the last century or so. And believe me, it's a story packed with speculation, financial crises, and even technological revolutions. It's going to change how you think about this metal for sure.
See, the thing is, silver's whole job in the world, it totally changed in the 20th century. It literally went from being the money in your pocket to being a global commodity. And that one shift, that's what set the stage for all the drama we're about to see.
So here are the key moments that made that happen. Back in '34, the U.S. government was a massive buyer, which propped up the price. But then, fast forward to 1964, and bam, they stopped making 90% silver coins. That basically took away its role as money. And the final nail in the coffin, that was 1971. President Nixon takes the U.S. dollar off the gold standard, and the whole system changes overnight. All of a sudden, silver was on its own. And that's when the wild ride really began.
Which brings us to our first major event. And honestly, it's probably the most infamous chapter in modern silver history. I'm talking about the spectacular peak of 1980, what everyone calls the Great Silver Squeeze. This is where you see what happens when a commodity is just left to the wolves of the market.
So, who were the main characters in this whole drama? Two Texas oil billionaires, the Hunt brothers. And their goal was, well, it was audacious. They wanted to buy up so much physical silver and so many futures contracts, the bets on future prices, that they could pretty much control the entire world's supply and set the price themselves. Just wild. And the crazy thing is, for a little while, it actually worked. On January 18, 1980, they pushed the price to what was then a totally unthinkable high, $49.45 an ounce. I mean, this was up from just a few bucks a year before. The market was in an absolute full-blown panic.
Okay, now here's the crucial point. You have to understand this. While other price peaks have come close in just, dollar terms, this one is still the champion. Why? Because when you adjust for inflation, that 1980 peak, that was the most valuable silver has ever been. That's a really key distinction to keep in mind.
And this is where the sheer scale of that bubble just hits you. In today's money, that $49 price tag, it would be worth over $140 an ounce. Let that sink in. An absolutely stunning price, and it was driven almost entirely by speculation.
All right, let's jump forward in time. We're going to move ahead about 3 decades to the next big spike. See, after the whole Hunt brothers thing fell apart, silver kind of went to sleep for a long time. But then, the 2008 global financial crisis happened, and that woke silver up in a big way. And this time, the story was completely different.
Yeah, the contrast between these two peaks is it's stark. The 1980 peak, that was a deliberate attempt to corner the market. But the 2011 peak, totally different. That was a reaction to what was happening in the global economy. Central banks were printing tons of money, and investors were running to precious metals looking for a safe place to park their cash. It was a completely different kind of buying frenzy.
And you can see it right here. The price almost perfectly matched that 1980 high, hitting just over 49 bucks. But again, this wasn't some sudden squeeze. Nope. This was the end result of a bull market that had been building for years, all kicked off by the economic mess of 2008. You've got two completely different stories that lead to almost the exact same number. Kind of fascinating.
So, that brings us right up to today. The latest chapter in silver's story, well, it isn't just being written by investors anymore. Now, industry is holding the pen. A whole new set of forces is shaping its future, and honestly, this is where things get really interesting for what silver might do long term.
This chart really puts it all into perspective. You see those two historic peaks, both hanging around that $49 mark? And then you see the new record set in 2025, blowing way past $75. So what's going on? What's driving this whole new era? What changed to make silver more valuable, at least in dollar terms, than it's ever been?
Well, here's the big difference. Unlike in the past, today's demand is really all about technology. I mean, silver is the most conductive metal on the planet,
That makes it absolutely critical for things like electric vehicles and maybe even more importantly, solar panels. So you have this huge, growing industrial demand, plus you still have investors interested, and you have a tight supply. That's a powerful mix. It's a whole new dynamic that's less about pure speculation and way more about actual, real-world use.
Okay, so we've looked at a whole century of booms and busts. What's the takeaway here? What do these massive peaks teach us about the risks and the rewards of something like silver?
Well, the number one lesson is pretty clear. High prices bring high risks. History shows us, plain as day, that after every single one of these major peaks, like 1980, like 2011, a sharp and pretty painful crash followed. It's so important to figure out if a price is being driven by real, fundamental industrial demand or if it's just being pumped up by speculative fever. Because investor sentiment, that can turn on a dime, and when it does, the fall can be just as stunning as the climb.
And all of this leaves us with one last, really fascinating question to think about. After a century of being money, then a speculative playground, and now a critical piece of our tech future, what is silver's true identity? Is its price a real measure of our economic health? Or is this crazy chart just a mirror, reflecting our own endless cycles of fear and greed? I think the answer, like with most things in finance, is probably a very complicated mix of both.